Ashley kind of started a new TikTok story trend by asking the question,
tell me a story about a time that you know that you saw something, but you don't ever tell this story because you know that no one would ever believe you. I don't think I've ever told this story before because I would sound like an insane person, but I know it happened. I want to be creeped out. I just watched the video of the girl, the Lyft driver in New Orleans, who says she picked up a vampire. I want more stories like that, but I'll tell you mine.
Don't worry about the vampire thing. We'll circle back around to that. I'm telling you, people have been telling the craziest stories on TikTok recently. But Ashley kicks off this request for creepy videos with a story of her own. And her story occurs when she's just 7 years old. See, Ashley grew up in the Chicago area, in a little suburb of Chicago, just southwest of the city. And on Fridays, her parents would go out to go bowling. I think that's really cute. They would go out on a little bowling date. She had a babysitter named Maria, who was probably about 16 or 17 at this time, and her little sister was around 2. It's a night for the girls, and Ashley's in the kitchen by herself, while Maria and her little sister are downstairs. And Ashley just happens to be looking out the window when she sees something strange.
It's dusk. The sun is like pretty much set. And I see a black panther jump over the fence and come down, stand underneath the apple tree. It was so tall that its shoulders almost came up to the first set of branches. Jet black. Black fur. And we had a house cat, so I know what the house cat size is in relation to this thing. This thing was easily 6 or 7 times the size of our cat. So I start calling for Maria, like yelling at her to come up to the kitchen to see this black panther in our backyard. She was taking her time. My sister was crying and she was tending to her. I'm standing there mesmerized by this black panther, and it turns and it looks at me and it makes eye contact. And on its head, this thing was jet black, but on its head, it had a little patch of white fur just going right like this. And we just stare at each other for a good 5 seconds or so. I hear Maria stirring. She's coming into the kitchen. And as she's walking into the kitchen, the panther runs into the lake. I was like, there was a panther in our backyard. Maria's like, it was just a house cat. I'm like, no, it was a panther.
So the night goes on and Ashley's positive of what she saw. She saw it clear as day. It was a panther going into the lake. And alarmingly, not too long after that, the doorbell rings. And this part of the story just gives me chills.
I'm in bed. I hear her doorbell. It's probably close to like 11 o'clock because my parents were still out. They usually came home around like 1 in the morning. So naturally I hear the doorbell ring. I get out of bed. I go to the top of the stairs and I see Maria answering the door. And I'm like creeping on the stairs and she lets this man in and he's wearing all black. He was like very pale. And I hear him tell her basically that he was a traveler who like lost his way and he needed to use our phone. It was the 90s, so people didn't have like cell phones easily accessible, so he just wanted to use like our landline. So Maria lets him in. He's using the phone. It's very muffled. I can't hear what he's saying. I like remember the conversation, but I don't. That's where mine and this girl's stories are similar. So after he makes his phone call, he's like turning to leave. He walks past the stairs. He looks up at me because I'm still sitting at the top of it. And I see on his head, he has a little patch of white hair in the same spot that the panther had. And he looks at Maria and he goes, thank you for your help. It's really easy to get lost in the shadows. And he leaves. Now this man shook me. Like I could not sleep that night. So when my parents got home, I was still awake in bed. I ran downstairs. I told them all about the panther. They chalked it up to an overactive imagination. And they were like, it was just a house cat. Like you're just letting your imagination get the best of you. And I told them about the man. They were pissed. They were fuming. They fired Maria for letting a strange man into our house, as they should have. But yeah, I don't know. I've looked into it. There have been tons of Black Panther sightings all over Illinois, close to Chicago. And yet the Department of Natural Resources maintains that there are no Black Panthers in Illinois.
That man basically looked like this panther had that same like patch of white. And a lot of the comments were saying like he was making sure you saw him, making sure you knew it was him. Now, after this video totally blew up, there were so many people commenting, and I was very pleased to see that this comment section was not full of naysayers, not full of people like, you were a kid, you don't know what you saw. It was a lot of people like, this sounds real. It sounds like you knew exactly what you saw. The fact that he came to your door, like that is just so creepy. This is very clearly something that wanted you to know what it was. Or not what it was, but like wanted her to see it. A lot of people were saying that this was a shapeshifter. And Ashley receives an email from someone who knows exactly the area she's talking about because they had a similar experience.
I got this email this morning and it gave me chills. Okay, so this person emails me and they said, hey, I just heard about your Black Panther sighting in the Chicago suburbs back in the 90s and I couldn't believe it. Did this happen to be in Lansing at the lake near Potts Park? It was. I actually had a similar experience around the same time in the same area. I was a teenager at the time and living with my parents on the lake. I don't have TikTok. My ex-girlfriend from the time reached out on Facebook Messenger to send me your video. We haven't talked in years. I had to reach out to you to tell my story because my story is crazy similar. I was sitting in the yard by the lake with my then girlfriend when we noticed a shadowy figure moving along the shoreline. It wasn't quite nighttime, but dark enough where we couldn't see far into the distance. She pointed it out first, and we initially thought it was a man, but the figure seemed to morph and shift, its form changing between a large, dark beast or crouching man. It's hard to explain what it was, as there aren't really words that would do it justice what we saw. Before I could really comprehend what I was seeing, the man-cat slipped silently into the water, vanishing without a trace. The air around me felt charged with an eerie energy, and I remember having a goosebumps and the hair on my arms was standing on end. It was one of the most unsettling and mysterious things I've ever witnessed. I haven't really told anyone about it because the entire time I just chalked it up to my mind playing tricks on me, and my then girlfriend and I convinced each other it was just a weird man going swimming. I don't really know. After that encounter, I sought out some answers and spoke to our old neighbor who lived near the lake. He was always kind of into weird stuff and spent a lot of time sitting in his yard and watching the water. He wasn't a professional, but he was a local historian of sorts and knew much about the area's lore. He told me about the legend of the shapeshifter that had roamed these lands for centuries. According to him, this being could take on various forms, often appearing as a panther, a wolf, or a man who could disappear into the water. The old man said the shapeshifter was believed to be a guardian of the area, sometimes a protector, and other times he'd show up when there was change coming. He said the last time he remembers somebody telling him about him showing up was when they built a new development of houses on the lake in the late 1980s. He advised me to always be cautious and trust my instincts when encountering such beings. He shared an anecdote about how the area was originally settled. Long before modern civilization took root, indigenous tribes lived here, coexisting with the land and its mystical inhabitants. They respected the shapeshifter, viewing it as a spirit of the earth. When the first European settlers arrived, they ignored the warnings and built too close to the sacred spots. Strange phenomena like animals and crops disappearing and eerie sightings bothered them until they learned to respect the land's ancient mysteries. The old man believed that the shapeshifter still watched over these lands, reminding those who live there to honor the past and tread carefully. And he says, I'm not sure what to make of it all, but I can't help but feel that our stories are connected in some way. Maybe there's a deeper mystery at play here. Stay safe out there and let me know if you hear anything else about the area from others. Best, Brandon. So I'm like, there's no way. So I start Googling. The first thing I type in is Native American tribes in Lansing, Illinois, and this comes up. Through the center of Lansing, running east-west, is a 25-foot-high elongated ridge of sand and gravel deposits that was once a great prominent Indian trail that is now known as Ridge Road. Here's a map of the area, okay? So this was the lake. This is Ridge Road. So this is how far we are. So then I type in what native tribes lived in the area, and this tribe comes up. Oh my God. They did ceremonies to appease the underworld panther and maintain balance. There's a myth of the underworld panther. In my story, I talked about how the panther disappeared in the water, and look at this journal entry. You can pause to read this if you'd like. But yeah, the underwater panther is apparently a whole thing, so.
I find it very interesting also that underwater panthers are a thing. I mean, not like a thing in the animal kingdom, but they are a thing in mythology. So did she see some kind of mythical creature that shapeshifted into a human to come into her home just to taunt her? Maybe. But I'm gonna be real honest with you. I don't know what she saw.